growing number of Asian students coming to the United States to attend college has been well documented. What are also rising, although in smaller numbers, are those U.S. students traveling to Asia to attend college there. When the Open Doors 2013 report is issued next week by the Institute of International Education, it is expected to show a sizable increase in the number of U.S. students studying in China. The reason why is contained in a new book from the Institute titled The Student Guide to Study Abroad. VOA's Ira Mellman spoke via Skype to one of the authors of that book. Stacie Berdan is an international careers expert. She says studying in Asia has become a boost to one's career after graduation.
I've worked actually in the corporate world for almost 20 years. I lived and worked in Hong Kong, and I realized the amount of just how it fast-tracked my career and how companies really appreciated my international exposure and experience. So when I speak on campuses, I realize that one of the best ways for students today to get that international experience, oftentimes the only way, is to study abroad.
Why do you think more students are headed to Asia than before?
I think because students and their parents and professors are realizing that study abroad can play an important role in complementing the education system and the education a young student gets. And because so much is happening with the rise of the Asian economies, and there's so much economic growth, so much happening throughout Asia, I think many more people are turning their eyes away from Europe. And since China, India, Vietnam, Thailand, so many of these countries actually are where the growth is happening, it pays to have that on your resume when you graduate.
What about the experiences that U.S. students will face when they go to Asia? Going to Europe is a pretty known commodity since the U.S. education system, I believe, is built on a European model, at least a British model. Things are not so much the same in Asia, is that correct?
Keep in mind the dynamic of the American college student is changing, right? We have a lot of immigrants here, a lot of first and second generation from Asia. And so many of them, too, are exploring the world. Some are going to Asia, some are going to Latin America and Europe. And so there is a difference when you go and you study abroad in a culture that is so very different from yours. And that's why I think it's very important that before students go, they take the proper cross-cultural preparation and training seriously, and they learn about the culture and their own culture's relationship to those cultures, not just this year, but over history and over the course of time, so that they're prepared once they land. And once they're in the region, for some of your listeners who are already there, it's really important to appreciate what you're going through and learn what you're going through with someone to actually help you, guide you through that, to kind of what we call it intervention, to help you internalize the experiences, because culture shock is great and culture shock happens to a lot of people wherever they go, but it can be more severe the greater the distance between the two cultures. And then once these students return to the U.S. to finish their degrees or then to get a job, it's really important to be able to integrate that experience into who you are, to be able to talk about what you've learned, especially with future employers, because they are going to be interested. There are so many multinationals who are interested in students who actually have studied abroad spent some time, maybe interned, even worked a little bit in various Asian countries, because it is risky. It is more daring. It is different. It is scary. It is so very far away, too. It's 2 to 3 times as far away, plane ride than the European destinations are. And so those are some of the benefits, but those are the reasons that when students go, they really do have to be prepared for it and be comfortable stepping outside their comfort zone.
If I am someone who is a native of China or another Asian nation, what should I know about the U.S. students coming there to study?
Wow, that's a great question. I think not to believe in the stereotypes. I think to appreciate and understand that Americans have a vast history and great geographic diversity, and we're not all alike, and we're not all what you see in movies and TV shows and those kinds of things, and that we're interested. If we're there as students and we're studying, we're really interested in the cultures, the languages, learning about different peoples, because although sometimes there can be a bad rap for study abroad students just going to party, which some may do it. I don't think it's as prevalent as people think. I don't think that's the reason students go to Asia. I think they're much more serious, and I think that's important for fellow Chinese students actually to know about their fellow Americans. And it's really important, actually, that they have these strong people-to-people connections. Because if a Chinese student branches out and goes to meet American students, which they should do, and Americans should meet Chinese students or Indian students or wherever it is that they're studying, that people-to-people connection is where the barriers are all dropped. The obstacles. Oh, I've heard this about China and I've heard this about America, but you're not like that. You're my friend and we're developing a relationship. And that people-to-people connection is so important in sustaining the bilateral relationships that the U.S. has with China, with India, with all nations around the world. And I think that's really important.
VOA's Ira Mellman speaking via Skype with Stacie Berdan, an international careers expert and a co-author of a new book called The Student Guide to Study Abroad.